Hello and welcome to our biological design class. I'm going to be giving you guys a quick look into how complex and how intelligently designed life is, including your own life and things that we take for granted and don't even fully understand. Because as I'm finding out, there is not a single scientist out there today or that has ever existed that fully understands life. That's how complex it is. And so today's introduction to this class, the very first thing we start off with is characteristics of life, what it means to be alive. And so we're going to be comparing you and other living organisms to everyday items because for me personally, I always thought that the technology we had was just so mind-blowing that there's nothing that could match it. However, after I experienced some miracles, it got me obsessed with the things that our creator has made and how complex they are. So I fell in love with biology, even though I had failed it in high school the first time around due to all the big words and things that intimidated me. I realized that there's something to this. There's a reason people are passionate about biology, and it's not just because they're nerds, it's because intelligent design is fun to study. People may not understand that they are studying something that's intelligently designed. However, it's still fascinating because we can't figure it out. And so, for our introduction to the characteristics of life, as you can see, we are full of all of these really intelligently designed body systems that work together to make you who you are. They are extremely complex. Each one of them on their own is complex, even on the level of the organs and the organ systems, but that goes down to the beyond microscopic, where you have things like genetic code, cell parts, all of these things that are irreducibly complex, and we'll be finding out what that means here in just a little bit. But before we do, I want to look at a cell phone or a few cell phones, because as you can see, the cell phones have obviously changed. We now have touch screens. We have phones that can do all sorts of things. They act as a calculator. They can literally record your voice or hear your voice and do internet searches and pull up videos. You can stream things. You can go live and do live videos. There's a lot of things these phones can do. And so it's obvious these devices are complex. They're really complex. There's so many complexities to these things that most people couldn't just take them apart and put them back together after removing all the pieces. It would take somebody, that is an extreme expert. Even the factory workers probably couldn't do that. They're all, they all have their own little parts that they do. Some people might help put certain pieces together, but a lot of it's done by machines. And then you have, this little assembly line going on. And knowing how complex these phones are, seeing them, dealing with them, probably having one come apart and seeing how the inside of it looks, would you think I was crazy if I had the most up-to-date iPhone, let's say whatever one it is, an iPhone 15. I don't know the latest one, but if I had an iPhone that was the latest edition with all the cool bells, whistles, and multiple cameras, and I came up to you and said, hey, this phone was not made in a factory. I found this in my yard when I was digging, and it's only made up of a few materials, some metals that are found in the soil, glass, which is just melted sand, and due to lots of pressure, lots of time, weather, all of these things combined, some major storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, fires, melting the sand, all of these things happened just right, and it made an iPhone. And I now have it. It even has the logo on the back to prove that it's an iPhone. That was made because of an apple that actually got pressed up against it and happened to make that indentation. And so this isn't a store-bought iPhone, even though it looks just like one. If I came to you with that claim, what would your first thought be? And if you're anything like me, you would think this is a crazy person. They're literally trying to scam me. They just bought this phone at the store. There's no way that nature, with any amount of change over time, could produce something like an iPhone. And so any scientist would think I'm crazy. However, when they look at something as complex as you or me, that's what they're saying made us. Change over time. circumstances, molecules stacking up, pressures, lightning striking water, all these things that they think, these miraculous circumstances that made you and me, and we are far more complex than a cell phone. And to give you an idea of how complex we are compared to the cell phone, let's start looking at things that we can do that a cell phone can't do. And so I have this little animation, or not really animation, this time-lapse video of actual cell division going on right here. You can see that one cell can become two cells, and two cells can become four cells. And so we can make new cells. We can repair. If you break your phone screen, no matter how long you leave it laying there, it's not going to repair on its own. If you don't plug your phone in, it's going to die. It doesn't go off looking for food and looking for energy. We were designed to do just that, to go and get food. And our mothers' bodies can even provide food for the offspring that were grown within their own bodies. No cell phone can ever or will ever be able to do that, to give birth to live young. There is something different about life that makes it so much more complex than a cell phone. And so there's no way that anyone can ever tell you that you or any living thing is a result of an accidental change over time scenario, because change over time is just that. Evolution is change over time. It is not a creator. It will never create. In fact, life over time usually degrades. Time isn't the best friend of life. Living things have a life expectancy. And so adding all the time you want is not going to make a difference. And so the complexity of life is going to be under the microscope with this little class. And so I hope that makes a lot of sense with the cell phone analogy, because that analogy can go even more simplistic. You can use something like a cup of water or a glass of water. People would think you were crazy if you said a glass of water just came into existence due to pressure over time. And so life, far more complex than anything that we've ever seen. There's no machine like it to date that can do the things that life can do. And so just how much information do we have inside our cells compared to a cell phone? Well, let's look and see, because I'm finding out that based on current estimates, I'm not saying these are exact, it could be far greater of a number than what they're telling us, but the estimates they have online say that you have around 30 trillion cells. There's some that say it's around 100 trillion, so they could be off. Okay, science isn't always exact, so don't just believe these numbers because they're up there on the screen. But that's what they're telling us, that there's around 30 trillion cells in your body. And inside each of those cells, there's about 1.8 meters of genetic information that we call DNA. And of course, it's so small, we have to rely on animations to show us what they think it looks like, because we have zero photos, like we said in our fact or fiction activity, of what DNA actually looks like. So when you see an animation like this, don't be misled. It may look way more miraculous, which I'm sure it does. But whatever it's shaped like, when scientists lay it out, they're able to unravel it to about 1.8 meters for every cell. If you were to take the chromosomes and unravel them and stretch out that genetic material, it would be about 1.8 meters, which is about 6 feet, if you're familiar with that unit. And so a person that's 6 feet tall, stretch that out, that's just one cell's DNA. And the cool thing about that, if you laid out a realistic map of what the world really looks like, you would see that 1.8 meters multiplied by 30 trillion gives you 54 trillion meters of DNA, which converts to 54 billion kilometers, doing some math here. And that means that if you were to take it to the equator, that's only 40,075 kilometers, it would wrap around that equator almost 1.5 million times. If you've ever gone on a long road trip, I know I've been across the United States, that's a long way. Well, this is way further than that, and it would be like going on that trip millions and millions of times. That's how much genetic code you have in your body, each of your bodies, far more information than a cell phone could ever have. And there's not one person or machine in existence that could take that much material and package it up in a way to fit it inside a body the size of a person. But our Creator was able to do that. And He was also able to do more than just that, because having all that material sitting there does you no good unless you can get things in motion. That's where we need the breath of life. There is a guiding force in all of our cells and in our bodies that is requiring the breath of life to keep it in motion. There is some precision going on that we're going to learn about, especially with cell division, that is mind blowing to scientists who study it. These things look like magic shows going on, but the Father is the one who can make these things happen and has always been the one who has made these things happen, things that we can't even see and that we're just now starting to figure out about life. And so the characteristics of life are the most common characteristics of life. Before we get into those, there's an important word that we're going to be using, or two words actually. I've used it already, and it's called irreducible complexity. I want you to familiarize yourself with what that word means. And so I've left you guys a video that will talk about what irreducible complexity is. There's a professor who's taken a lot of heat for looking at things and looking at how complex they are. And he was able to go from believing in evolutionary ideas to seeing that it falls apart when you apply this term here, irreducible complexity, to it. And so I want you to watch the video that's on slide number 10 and come to a conclusion about what irreducible complexity is and how you, as well as every cell in your body, is just that, irreducibly complex. And so before we do any vocab and move on, I want you to do that, define it in your own words, and give an example of it with any machine, and then also with any other cell part or body system that you can think of, to demonstrate how there are certain machines that are irreducibly complex, and we, with all of our parts, are also irreducibly complex. So take some time to create those examples. They're going to use an example with a mousetrap or a boat motor in the video. And so that'll give you some things to look at. But go ahead, watch the video. It's worth sitting through and looking at the points that they make and the ways that people challenge that information. So there's definitely going to be a lot of people in the science world challenging it, but it holds up to the test. And so irreducible complexity, I'm going to let you explore what that is and find some real world examples and share those with your parents and your peers, just how awesome and wonderfully made you really are. So have fun with this, and we will see you next time as we go over all of the characteristics of life and hopefully have a fun way for you guys to show that you understand what these characteristics of life are. And should involve a game that you all can play together with other people that are doing the same experience. It'll be fun. I'll have to coordinate it. It'll be after school hours for me, so it'll probably be closer to like 5 in the evening if you all are okay with that. And that'll be Eastern time. And we could also, of course, work to set it up to where you guys can do it on a different time zone as well. So hopefully we'll all be there, and it can be a fun, interactive adventure that we can embark on many times throughout this school year. So have fun with this learning experience, and we will see you guys around really soon.